Sports Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Is that how it is, Anthony?
It's Dallas week, Craig.
It is Dallas week.
Oh, you're not excited for it?
I mean, it is. I think this is what the phrase "it is what it is" was invented for.
Yep.
And I gotta give Ron Rivera credit. I think I'm not gonna be able to say for many more days because he ain't gonna be here that much longer. But like, Ron was talking today, and he was kind of riffing at this point. I don't even know what the question was, and he just goes, so people asking me, "Oh, how do you get motivated for this game?" And he's like, "It's Dallas week." And if you're still that in it where he's at, congratulations. I do find the focus level for NFL head coaches and NFL people often to be pretty miraculous. Like, Ron is on his way out, obviously, and he's like, it's still Dallas week. And I don't know that it's lip service. Like, it is kind of probably some lip service, but it's also like how he's tricking himself to get ready. Logan used to always be a guy who was like, hey, I got this because I have to. Like, my career is on the line. He was able to like convince himself and get his mind right for games with that survival instinct, even if the wins and losses didn't matter. Like, that's what it is to be a pro sometimes, is finding the motivation when otherwise it's not going to be there. And that's what this weekend is going to be about. Even though most of the fans listening right now and most of the fans that'll be at FedEx Field is as much as like, even if they get into the game and it's like, it's Dallas week, can't stand losing to these guys. Look, can we ruin their season? Can we ruin them winning the division? Somewhere in the back of your mind is like, but I really want that number 2 pick. And that's kind of where we are. It's just it's a weird season. It's a weird season, man. And it's almost finally mercifully over.
Yeah, it is. But it's still Dallas week. So I'm excited. That's why I was so anxious, to play the Commander song. Might be the last time until, August.
I mean, I think we should be like, you're allowed to play it during the the off season. There's times that
we're gonna have some good moments.
I feel like, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope it's not all bad. That would be terrible. We waited all this time to get to the off season so that changes could happen and we'd see who Harris would hire. And, like, can you imagine you hire the new head coach and it's like, we want Dallas. It's like, hey, let's go.
Yeah, we're ready now.
Let's party. We have some competence here.
We coming.
At all levels of the organization, and we're working on graduating from competent to good. Yeah. How about how you like them apples? Dallas Cowboys on the verge of a division title. Everything seems to be clicking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Next year's gonna be interesting. Like, they're gonna lose Dan Quinn.
Yeah.
Enjoy it while it lasts, Cowboys fans.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Meanwhile, do you have the Rivera sound?
I do indeed.
From today. Ron Rivera said this today, and it's caused quite a stir.
Before, or as much as you have in general?
It's interesting, and I don't know if people will agree with me or believe in what I'm saying, but hell with that. I managed for about 3.5 years. While I was here, I managed. Probably the last 5 weeks I've coached. Getting back and doing the defensive coordinator stuff was a thrill. It really was. You can ask some of the guys. That's been fun. That really has. There's some really fond memories I'll have of them. There really are. And we'll see what happens. I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen. All I know is we play on Sunday. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go out there and play and see what happens. Somebody asked me earlier today, how do you get motivated for this game? Hell, it's Dallas. How do you not get motivated?
So there you go, Ron riffing at the end there. But the most important part, the quote that has gotten everyone's attention is, I was managing for 3.5 years. I've been coaching for 5 weeks. And Anthony, it's almost like I've been telling people some version of that the last couple of weeks on the show. And I know Logan mentioned it on the podcast today as well. Like, you got a guy in Ron Rivera that was sitting way up here surface level for most of his tenure. And the last couple weeks has been forced to get back in the weeds. And what has happened is a lot of players who weren't super fond of Rivera, who were like, all this dude does is cause us problems when he mismanages the clock or when he opens his mouth at the podium and then we have to answer questions. And yeah, we respect him and we had his back when he had cancer and, he has saved us occasionally from answering some of the ownership questions. Like there's some good management stuff that Ron has done, but like this dude's supposed to be our head football coach. And they see him as defensive coordinator. They're like, oh, I get it now. He's got some juice. His energy's different. I like this guy. I like defensive coordinator Ron Rivera. And so, factually speaking, what Ron Rivera is saying there is accurate. And what I would tell him is, buddy, you've been in charge the whole time. This is a thing that I have been wondering aloud into that microphone for basically the entire time we've been doing this radio show and for all the fill-in work that I did before that, all the part-times, all the weekends, all the nights over on the Fan, fill in here, et cetera, it is clear at times that Ron Rivera has different ideas than his coordinators. That whether it's EB this year, certainly Scott Turner the past couple of years on the offensive side, or you look at what they're doing with Del Rio from Del Rio to Rivera's defense right now, and it's like, yeah, you clearly had some different ideas because you've changed some stuff, bro. You've pared down and simplified in a way that, like, this defense is playable, even if it's not good, but, like, there's only so much you can do in the middle of the season, and you got the same personnel, and you intentionally did some stuff personnel-wise to make yourself worse and basically not have a pass rush. Not that the pass rush was thriving beforehand, but, like, I think if Montez Sweat was here now, he'd be having a maybe not as good of a time he's having in Chicago, but Montez Sweat would have finished this year very different than he started it if he was in this system, not what Del Rio was running. And the thing is, if the 49ers were losing and Kyle Shanahan wasn't running the offense and he wasn't very involved and he was like, I'm just trying to manage, you'd be like, dude, the reason you got the job is because you're one of the best coaches in the league. And Ron Rivera is the manager who decided that Ron Rivera, the coach, wouldn't be coaching. And so ultimately at his job of head coach, no matter what he's talking about management versus coaching, Ron Rivera, maybe Ron Rivera, the manager, failed Ron Rivera like the whistle football coach, the X's and O's schematics football coach, but it's the same dude. And so I don't really have a lot of sympathy for it. I have a little bit of empathy because I also know that he was managing like Snyder, basically, and some of that stuff and the transition to Josh Harris. And there were head coachy type of things that were unique to this organization that he had to manage, for sure. But part of managing is allocating resources. So if he needed to go coach, he needed to hire someone to go and take care of that other stuff. And so you can't, I'm glad that Ron has had a better time because I don't root for people to have bad times, right? I don't think Ron being bad at what he's been bad at means that he should have to suffer, right? I'm glad that he's had more fun the last 5 weeks. I'm glad that he's shown that he's still got a little bit left on the coaching side of it, to the point that, would you consider bringing him as like a senior defensive assistant, or even if you're a young offensive coach somewhere other than here, would you hire him as your DC like Sean McVay did Wade Phillips? Probably not. Wade was coordinating top 5 defenses very recently before that. Ron hasn't been a defensive coordinator outside the last 5 weeks in a long time, well over a decade. And by the way, they're 0-5 the last 5 weeks and have still given up a lot of points per game. So better is a relative term. But good for him to have this on the way out. But it's your fault that you haven't been here all along. And as I said on Twitter earlier, do I think that if Ron Rivera was coaching more, this team would be a 12-win team every year? Of course not. Would they have been better? Probably. And I do think that on a larger level, the CEO head coach model is dying. Because if you're that removed from the day-to-day, it's really hard to know what a team needs. And I think being more involved on one side of the ball keeps you sharp in a way that Ron Rivera hasn't been as a head coach and especially as a personnel person trying to do both these last 4 years. And so that's hindsight. That's easy for me to say now, and we don't know how it would have went alternatively. But it certainly is something that I wonder when Ron looks back and reflects, whatever that's worth, on his time here, and he's like, well, I only got to coach a little bit. And it's like, yeah, man, who made that decision? It wasn't all circumstance. You decided to do that. And he ultimately is going to have to own that, whatever that ultimately means. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, who you should be rooting for on Sunday to ensure that the Commanders get the number 2 pick. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope that you are having a fantastic Friday, a football Friday on the Team 980, driven by your local Honda dealer. Experience power, performance, and ruggedness with Honda. see your local Honda dealer. Anthony, it was kind of funny today seeing the reactions of everybody being like, what am I doing here on a Friday? Because normally I do the show from home on Fridays, but because I've been doing the show from home most of the week, I was like, I'll come in. I got to talk to CK about something real quick, and I got to set something up for Monday's show. And I also, when I used to be in here on Fridays a little bit more often, our Football Friday sponsorship, I printed it out, so I had it. And I love to see that it's been treated with the respect that it deserves. This is a beat up piece of paper.
Yeah, it's probably been, moved and tossed around. And it's been a while, though.
It looks like it's been burned.
Whoa, it's been burned?
Like, these holes right here in the paper.
Good gracious.
They're probably pen marks, but they look like someone was being a little pyro. Because, like, the black, what's probably ink, just looks like burn marks. And I'm just saying, with, like, Matt Essig and Chris Russell rolling around, they're wild cards, bro. You never know.
Are they suspects?
They are suspects in whatever happened over here. They are both suspects and suspect.
Okay.
See what we did there?
Yes.
But anyway, we're at Football Friday. We're presented by your local Honda dealer, and we're excited about it. You know what we're excited about? Draft picks, baby. Why? Because that's where we're at in the season. That's just kind of what the reality of the Washington Commanders season is, something that we'll talk about with Clinton Yates coming up at the bottom of the hour. Talk about the end of the Rivera era, and then talk a little college football playoff as well. Logan's thoughts on everything coming up as well at the top of the hour in Take Command. But here's what you need to know. I think this deserves a full treatment, Anthony. Let's get the whoa, we're just throwing stuff now over here. Let's get the music going. Let's give it the full treatment. Here is what. Oh nope, I don't. Do you have NFL music that you can play? Because I got an error over here.
Give me like 5 seconds.
Okay.
Because my computer's also moving really slow.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's loading.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're now in a race. Anthony and I are two tortoises racing to see who can get the music going first.
It's getting ridiculous.
So that we can tell you who. Yeah, I got it. I won.
You got
Sucker. And we can tell you who to root for this weekend. 1, you root for the Cowboys. How about them Cowboys? You need them to win. Otherwise, most of this is irrelevant, I guess, unless all the teams win that are in the mix for the Commanders. But getting to 5 wins could potentially bring in a lot more teams. Right now, the way it stands, you have obviously the Panthers, who have locked up the number 1 pick on behalf of the Chicago Bears, or the other way around. The Bears have locked up the pick courtesy of the Panthers. They're the worst. Patriots 4-12, Cardinals 4-12, Commanders 4-12. And then there's the Giants, the Titans, and the Chargers, all that have 5. Really? Music's just going to free. I thought I won the race. The race is over, music. You just need to keep running. Giants, Titans, Chargers all have 5 wins. So, obviously, if everybody wins, if Patriots suddenly win, which is possible, by the way, they face the Jets. If the Cardinals win and then the Commanders win, you bring these other teams into the equation. But assuming losses here and assuming that we can power through here and get what we need. Pittsburgh at Baltimore. You want Pittsburgh to win.
Mm-hmm.
So Lamar not playing this weekend, very helpful. Mason Rudolph has had the Steelers offense looking good. And they also, by the way, they've already secured Mike Tomlin's 17th straight winning season, which is nuts. But they could get to 10 wins. That's got to be one of the worst 10-win teams I could ever remember.
Yeah.
I don't know else is in the mix, but it definitely feels like that's not a good team. But they could do it, and that would be helpful for the Commanders. And I do believe you need like 3 of these, but there's one of these games, I think Atlanta, New Orleans, counts double because of the way the schedules conflict. So whatever that's worth. Houston and Indy. I believe Atlanta, New Orleans is the one that counts double. Houston at Indy. Let's go Colts. So we need the Colts. We need your boys. Tell Zaire. In fact, call Zaire right now and just be like, Z, I know you guys are fighting for a playoff spot. I know this means a lot to you to go up against CJ Stroud and make a statement. I know you're pissed right now because you got snubbed from the Pro Bowl. You're going to have 1,100 tackles on Sunday. But we need you to help us get the number 2 pick. You got to go beat Houston.
I'm going to let them know.
Okay.
Relay that message.
Okay. So anything we can do to add to the fire?
I mean, I think you did a great job, you know? I think the
Z's going to kill someone this weekend, and it's going to be
the
great.
Pro Bowl snub really, really hurt. So
Yeah.
I think he's really eager to get out there.
Yeah. Atlanta at New Orleans. You want New Orleans to win. So you're looking for bad Taylor Heineke. Who's even starting for the Falcons? Is it Heineke? Or they go back to Ritter again?
It might be Heineke.
I think it's Heineke. But remember, they benched Heineke to bring in Ritter at the end of last week, and then Ritter threw another pick. Anthony, actually, you're starting at quarterback for the Falcons this weekend.
I think I would do a solid job, to be honest.
I could hand the ball to Bijan.
Oh, Heineke is actually questionable. But he will start if he can go.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Bodes well for New Orleans. Saints, do the damn thing. This is going to be a tough one. Bears at Packers. So it's at Green Bay, which is helpful. Justin Fields has been talking a little smack. Kind of, but not really. Like, he said something that's actually very factually obvious, which is there's not a lot to do in Green Bay, Wisconsin. But there's been some rivalry kerfuffling this weekend. And you got the Packers is who you need to win if you're the Commanders. And then Denver at Las Vegas. You want Vegas to win, which feels doable. This feels like you could go 5 for 5 the way the injuries and stuff are panning out. Houston, Indy's going to be tough. Houston, I'm going to probably pick Houston in that game as much as I will be rooting for Z. Chicago, Green Bay could get hairy, but I like Green Bay's chances. Jordan Love's been playing really well. And then Denver, Las Vegas is a bit of a wild card, but the way Vegas' defense has been playing and the way, Denver's been kind of rolling into the end of this season, I think they got a good shot here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is, week 18 and I need some miracles. So whoever you decide to go for, I will be going opposite of that. So
you're gonna play that game this week.
Yes, I'm glad you're going Houston. I'm glad you're going Green Bay because I was thinking the Bears anyway. And I will be with you though with Las Vegas. I think that's an obvious one right there.
The thing is, for the Commanders and the number 2 pick though, I don't know that it's gonna matter. Like, I don't know that these games are gonna matter because I think the Jets are gonna lose to the Patriots. Like, I was taping a national hit today with my guy Andrew Filipponi for the FanDuel show that he does on the weekends across the Odyssey Sports Network. And he asked me, like, do you think that there's any win-win for the Gipper for Rivera? And I do not think that there's any of that. I do think there's going to be some of that for Belichick.
Ooh.
And the Jets' offense is terrible, and the Patriots' defense is good.
Yeah,
so,
people are at least playing for the Patriots, too. We got a couple of people out. John and
John
Kendall
is
so
out,
far.
and so far I think is a key word. I don't think Cam's going to wind up playing, etc. So I think that there's a really good chance that the Commanders lose, and then the the Patriots win, and then none of this really matters because the Commanders are safely ahead of the Cardinals. So there's that. All right, that is what you need to know in terms of who to root for the number 2 pick, the games that you need to know, the games you need to have an eye on. It is the where'd it go? It is the Steelers over the Ravens, the Colts over the Texans, Saints over the Falcons, Packers over the Bears, and the Raiders over the Denver Broncos. When we get back, Clinton Yates joins us to reflect on the end of the Ron Rivera era. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, and we're always live on the free Odyssey app. The Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's a Friday, and football season is basically over, which means turned home. Yes, your home is on Fridays.
Yes.
That's what we're saying here.
That is correct. Are you a Happy New Year? How long does your Happy New Year window extend, Craig? Because it's
This
Friday.
is a great
It's the
question.
last business day of the week, but people have different criteria on this. Like if it's somebody I'm going to see who I see a lot, but I haven't seen in January, I still might say it. But if it's somebody I don't see a lot, it's a tough one.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's necessarily a hard and fast rule. I do think your gradient is the correct way to approach it. I think generally speaking, the first week is pretty good. Like once we've had another, like once we're at January 8th and it's like, all right, this is the second Monday we're in this thing. But especially this week, because it fell on a Monday. It's a short week. Like I feel like Clinton, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Gregory. You know where I spent New Year's? Las Vegas, Nevada. I was there for 5 days. I do not recommend that to anybody. It's a long story. I went to see my cousin play. As you know, he plays with Bruno Mars. So we spent New Year's with the Hooligans, and it was just cheaper to be there for a couple more days. Advise.
No, there is New Orleans, Las Vegas, and probably Miami, probably a couple other cities that I'm forgetting. Strict 4-day rule.
Max. That's
Stripping your travel days. Like you arrive, that's day one. You have day 2 and day 3 that are full. On a day 4, you leave. You get the bleep out of town, and you do not think twice about it.
I left day 5 afternoon. That was a brutal plane ride. That's all I'm going to say.
That is 36 hours too many, sir. See, in New Orleans, though, it's easy because if you don't leave, then your body just shuts down because of the amount of butter that you've been taking.
True. Yeah,
there's other considerations in the other cities.
The Big Easy, way easier.
Yeah, you're just like, I have to get out of here. Anyway, apropos of none of that, Clinton Yates, of course, commentator for ESPN with us here on the Hoffman Show. And Clinton, the Ron Rivera era is coming to a close. He is likely done. I say likely, most certainly done after Sunday's game. We expect an announcement sometime fairly early on Black Monday. When you think of the Ron Rivera era, the 4 years that have been here in Washington, how would you eulogize the soon dying era?
Milquetoast is a word that comes to mind. And also, I've thought about this quite a bit. When you think about like the coaches in the history of the franchise, they all had something that people either liked or people either hated or people thought was really cool. Ron, it was so boring. It just felt like nothing was ever truly happening. Always, we got to take a look at this. We got to take a look at that. We'll see next week. It was like, Grandpa, all right already. Can we go to the carnival? You know what I'm saying? It just felt like sitting on the porch the entire time, never really wanting to mix it up in the streets or even have fun with the rest of the family in the backyard. It just felt like a holding pattern where the goal was to try to get somebody that was a proven NFL guy, that was a name folks recognized, but it felt like a little bit of a retirement plan for Ron Rivera. And I'm not mad at him for that, but it's got to be one of the least exciting coaching eras that fans of that team have seen in a really, really long time, because personality goes a long way, bro. And this guy didn't have much of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, at least with Spurrier, we got 5-11. Not very good.
Dadgummit.
Dadgummit. I think it's interesting to like Milquetoast is both correct and crazy because it also was 4 years of nonstop chaos.
Yeah.
Like there was always something, and some of it was like really serious and sad. Like Ron having cancer was a real thing, and like the way the guys battled for him and kind of rallied around him and the team. It was also at a weird time and for all of us because that was happening during peak of COVID in 2020. Like that was kind of a lot of things happening. But then you have like all the stuff with Chase Young, all the constant quarterback searching and consternation. The sale of the team was and all the investigations are always swirling in the background. Like it has been 4 years of nonstop chaos. And in a weird way, like Ron was brought in to kind of settle down the Bruce Allen, Jay Gruden, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And it feels like in so many ways it just never stopped. It just kept on going. And sometimes he was trying to plug the holes, but it just never did.
That's true, but that's also part of the reason why when I think of Ron Rivera, I actually think about football. I don't really ascribe all that other stuff to him. Sure, he was the head coach. Sure, he was the one that was sort of assigned to kind of keep it under wraps whilst things changed, but they didn't. And also the product didn't get a ton better or worse as well. And so I'm willing to say, okay, Ron, you walked into a franchise that needed you. I'm not going to say that you're the person I think of when I think of the lawsuits, when I think of the sale of the team. I don't necessarily know that really was going to change no matter who that coach was. And so I try to keep it to the football. And when I think about, for example, with the GM, like how many Pro Bowlers have they had in his era?
0.
I mean, okay. Like,
they have not drafted. Like they've had guys make the Pro Bowl. They have drafted none of them. The only guys that have made the Pro Bowl are Daron Payne, Terry McLaurin, John Allen, and Jeremy Reeves on special teams, all of whom predated this regime.
Well, that's exactly my point. If you look at the actual football, you're just kind of like, ho-hum. You might have had a couple of good wins here and there. There might have been a couple of quarterback controversies here and there, but that's nothing new in D.C. That's the backbone of the daggone franchise. They're the second most next to Cleveland in this situation, and look who's playing quarterback there. Like, I just kind of feel like at some point, this franchise has to commit to somebody who either is in alignment vision-wise with whoever the GM is and the owner is, none of these power struggles any longer, or somebody that plain just people like. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't mean to get all off into other things, but the idea of a sexy hire, I don't find that unattractive for a team that otherwise you don't know where they're going. The question is, what is attractive to one person versus another? Is a staid veteran like a Rivera, or let's just say the heavens open up and Bill Belichick wants to walk back into the East Coast and move on down the line? And sure, that is, but you got to get somebody that people want to show up to see, as opposed to who are just willing to deal with because they care about football that much. I think the fan base deserves that, if that makes sense. Personally, I think the GM hire is probably a little bit more important to the larger goal, but I do think that the head coach of this team is a very important next hire from an optics standpoint, for sure, for the Commanders.
Yeah, no, I do. I also, though, like, I just think this fan base they'll say whatever they say on the day that it's hired, and if someone starts winning, then they'll get on board.
Perhaps.
Like, it has been so bad. And I think, too, to go back to, like, your larger point, Rivera's football tenure has been so unremarkable that there is nothing to outshine all the other stuff that I was talking about, right? Like,
correct.
That's where the milquetoast and kind of the chaos
Absolutely
combine,
correct.
is that the milquetoast was so milquetoasty, so unremarkable, that there's no football data point where you're like, oh, yeah, that's the big thing in the last 4 years, unless you intentionally block out the other stuff and then make your list of the worst things that he's done or the best things that he's done.
Yeah, or unless we're going to have Heineke be the story of your era, which it probably was, if we're being very honest, you know what I mean, from a football run standpoint. And that, sure, that's great, but that's not at the level of anything. You don't got to go that far up the road to see how a real franchise operates with a real quarterback. And yeah, they had real problems in the sense that there was a holdout and all that with Lamar, but guess what? He came back, and guess what? They built a team, and guess what? They've got to buy into the playoffs. They're not worrying about Black Monday, in a situation like this. So, it's an important hire for Josh Harris. It's not make or break per se, but I do think it's something that you've got to figure out. Are you going to go GM coach, or are you going to say, here's the two guys I'm bringing in together? I think that's one of the more difficult choices that owners are forced to deal with, because I don't know that the days of the coach and the GM being the same person are something we're going to see much more in the NFL.
No, I think there could be 3 people hired, not 2. Like, I think you're looking executive football, whatever, vice president, whatever, that senior title, that, like, your job is to make sure the whole organization is working together and maximizing resources level. GM, like, okay, you're the scouting guy, you're picking the players, and then coach, and they'll all come from similar enough, philosophical backgrounds that they're on the same page. But hopefully, I think you probably get one of those that's got a lot of experience and has been around, one that's kind of a young mind, and then, we'll see what other gaps you need to fill in.
But I think that's going to be the plan, and I think that's the right plan
I
for
agree.
any team.
And I know that we're speaking sort of theoretically here, but this is a big year for the Commanders. The draft, huge. What happens in the offseason, massive. It is the defining first part of the Josh Harris era. Sure, it was great to buy everybody Bud Lights when you guys are out there at the bullpen. Sure, it was funny to get a meme on national television when you couldn't shake somebody's hand, but that's not football. This is the first step of the important football decisions. And I do think that there is an element of how Ron makes an exit that's going to matter here. Like, if they, let's just say they win this game. Let's just say they screw around and beat the Cowboys. Like,
Yikes.
what happens there? Are you going to can him that night? I don't think you're going to do that. I think you've got to have a little bit more grace with it, because if nothing else, Ron did fall on a couple swords during his time here. So, like, there are some decisions to be made diplomatically, if you will, that I think are going to affect how the fan base feels about it. And that's a tough spot to be in, which is why I would have fired him earlier in the year, so you didn't have this problem now, Gregory. But that's just me.
I don't know that there's a problem. I think that no matter what, like, hey, Ron, thanks for, beat Dallas forever. You get that memory. I think Monday morning is the time, no matter what. Like, I am so unconcerned with the timing of this on Sunday night versus Monday morning.
Okay.
Also, because the Eagles screwed around and lost the Cardinals, and the Cowboys can win the division, and the Lions 2-point conversion thing happened. This game should be at 1:00. So this game's not going to, it's at 4:25. This game's not going to end till 7:30. I don't think we're getting news Sunday night.
Okay. All right.
That's not going to stop me from going to the game, just in case. It's not going to stop me from going to what should be a very candid locker room.
For that final image of Ron Rivera with the finger in the air. I gave you my best and I still wasn't enough. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh. I just, in the story of the life, I definitely mean to laugh. In the story of the football life of Ron Rivera, I still don't even know how high Washington ranks on his personal list, which is such an odd thing to say for a guy who's been in the NFL for that long.
It was funny today. He, at his press conference, was kind of riffing, and he's like, people are asking me how I get motivated for this game. And it's like, it's Dallas. How can you not be motivated? And I was like, there's the old Gipper. Anyway, Clinton Yates with us here on the Hoffman Show. He's going to stick around for a little bit longer. We'll talk a little college football playoff next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Clinton Yates joins us for one more segment. Of course, ESPN. You can watch him on Around the Horn, listen to ESPN Daily, etc., etc. You, sir, have intaken quite a bit of college football this year, going around doing some of the Heisman House stuff. You actually watch it. You got to see Caleb Williams out there as you're in LA. We should probably talk about that in a moment, but let's start off with the playoff. Michigan beats Alabama, and then Michael Penix puts on a show for Washington. Championship game, obviously, on Monday. Any strong lean either way on how that one goes?
Rooting for Washington, like Washington, think Washington will win. That team has at minimum 2 guys as receivers that are going to play on Sundays, 2 of them who might even go in the first round. Are you listening, Commanders? And I just sort of feel like they are a better football team. I know Michigan's been ranked number 1. I understand all that. But when I look at the pieces that they put together, the Huskies, they've been good like this for 2 years now. I just think they're a little bit more special of an offense and how they run things. Don't necessarily I don't have a problem with Michigan being there. I'm not one of these guys that thinks that, if you're going to vacate the championships, then Jim Harbaugh shouldn't be there. And I don't care about that crap. That doesn't matter to me. I like this Washington team. I think that they are better composed from a balance standpoint. And I like Michael Penix Jr. He's the story of a kid that, not unlike many quarterbacks these days in college, transfers from a big school to another school, gets a Heisman shot, finds himself for the national title. It's amazing how that route has become fortuitous for a lot of guys, Caleb Williams included, and he's really done a great job with it. If those who don't know, Penix is a bit of an injury issue. It's one of the reasons why he's not marked higher on the draft board. Once again, Commanders front office, I'm talking to you, but I still think he has the skill set of anybody that's as good as anybody in this draft that is immediately applicable to the league. That's the key thing for this. A lot of guys, yeah, you can say they got potential, but it doesn't seem quite obvious just what they're going to do well at the next level beyond just develop and potentially be better. Michael Penix Jr., I think, could walk into the NFL right now and be a pretty solid starter compared to the rest of the guys that are running teams in the league at this point for non-playoff squads.
Yeah, so he's such an interesting one for me. I always worry about older quarterbacks, not because oh my God, by the time he gets to his second contract, he'll be 28 years old. I don't care.
Right.
Quarterbacks that are good and understand how to stay healthy, which, some of his injury stuff has been bad luck. It's not like he doesn't know how to do it, and he's stayed healthy for the last couple of years. These guys play until their mid-30s. I'm not that concerned about getting 2 contracts worth out of a first-round pick. But it's are you a 23-year-old who's just beating up on 19-year-olds because you're smarter and more developed as a human being?
Sure.
Or did you develop and figure some things out, and you can continue that trajectory to the NFL? And there's been a couple of guys as of late that have proven that don't really worry about the age. And I think Penix could definitely fall into that group. Some of the underlying data for him is awesome. One of the things that I think we worried about with Sam Howell, and we've seen it this year, is his sack to pressure ratio in college was terrible. He took a ton of sacks.
Yes, he
got
got hit
pressure
a lot
all the time. Penix is one of the most ridiculous numbers I've ever seen. He's at 6.8%, where Williams is in the 20s, I think, or high teens, 20s. So some of the stuff that you worry about for guys going pro, Penix doesn't have that, and he's got a crazy quick release. He's accurate, make all the throws. It looks a little funny sometimes, but
but that's only because he's left-handed.
Dude can win from the pocket.
That's the only reason it looks funny.
You know what's great? Did you see the video that was going around of him getting flipped? He looks like Lamar. His release looks like Lamar.
So I think, and this, I don't know how old this is. What I said when I was talking about this on ESPN Daily the other day, he reminds me a little bit of a left-handed Randall Cunningham. And that is a little bit of a different, a throwing motion thing. From his left hand, he looks like a left-handed version of the right-handed guy. Anyway, that's not the point. But Kalen DeBoer, his coach, who came with him from Indiana, is a large part of that. I'm not saying you hire away a coordinator from college to take with a quarterback. What I'm saying is that Penix is shown to be a student of the game that has affected his ability to be more than just a 23-year-old beating up on 19-year-olds. That is part of why he was able to go to Washington, the Huskies, that is, and be so effective so quickly, and part of the reason why he was named a captain as a transfer immediately, not just because he was the big guy that was coming in. He came from Indiana. They had other guys. There wasn't supposed to be it wasn't. I think that he's got the football IQ that we've seen sort of, and it's really, really tricky because do you go with yet another big kid from North Carolina, or do you go with somebody who's got to prove it but doesn't necessarily have a ton, even though he does have plenty? When I'm referring to a Heisman, who is there. It's not an easy decide how hard this choice is compared to the rest of it, because as in the head coach and it's a player, so it's a little different. But not an easy pick. I just don't know philosophy is going to be on this, and I really hope that Josh Harris does.
Yeah, no, I think that, the good news is they have a lot of options, from trading down to taking someone at 2, if that's where they wind up, to, does Penix have a bad national championship game at 34 when you take at the top of the second?
Sure.
And you steal a guy there. I think there's a roster. I think it's pretty fascinating. The one guy that everyone does seem to agree is worth it at Williams. You have seen him up close and personal out there in LA. He's definitely didn't have the year that I think a lot of people were anticipating based off the Heisman campaign the year before, but he also threw for a ton. You see the skill set. Like, what do you make of Caleb Williams?
Honestly, Craig, I don't know. And I don't say this as a knock on the kid. DC kid, Gonzaga kid. I've seen that kid play in a lot of different places, but I don't know, because I never, ever loved the system he played in with Lincoln. We talk all the time about how Lincoln Riley's a quarterback whisperer and this, that, and the third. But when these guys get to the pros, it gets a little different if they're not specifically running something that is obviously already proven. Kyler Murray, it took him a while. Baker Mayfield and all these guys, they could play. How that quick strike style manifests itself at the pro level for his best skill, improvisational ability. You know what I mean about him? What would you say that he has that is definitely above all the other guys? I don't know that it's speed. I don't even know that it's decision making, but he's just a really good football player playing at quarterback. I'm not sure this team has the direction, a guy like that, and give him the keys to everything. That just seems like putting a lot of eggs of a young man who, A, as you mentioned, coming off of a down year in college, and B, hometown franchise resurrection savior. Big decision for a guy like that when you haven't had a lot of success recently with your quarterbacks. That's what I'm saying. This decision is important for more reasons than football decision there. And that's what I said last week. I actually don't think it's going to be Caleb, though.
Yeah, I think that, the hope for Caleb as a player is he undergoes a similar trajectory as Mahomes.
Sure.
Otherworldly creator at Texas Tech, and he sits for a year on him.
Right.
He's not the first pick. He's the 11th pick. He sits a year behind Alex Smith when he comes, but they're not like, oh my God, save us, Patrick Mahomes, because they were already a playoff team, which means there also was some infrastructure around him, different than what Caleb would be coming into here.
Exactly right. That's the big difference. I just don't know that I believe in the developmental core of this franchise as a player that he probably really could be. And this is the case in a lot of different sports for a lot of different. Sometimes you want a guy that's more ready to play, even if the higher ceiling isn't necessarily what you think it is. To me, that's where the Commanders necessarily. Look, are they a playoff team tomorrow if they get Michael Penix Jr.? No, that's not. I think that another project, emotionally, psychologically, and not that Williams is a project. The project of getting him to an NFL level that's going to make your team good and not just have him book. That is a project, because we don't know who's going to be involved. There's just so many moving parts to Josh really is going to have to figure out what is his philosophy going to be. Are you going to just be a football player that your football guys tell you? Or are you going to say, that's the human that I want? Not, Daniel M. Snyder said, I want Bob. I'm willing to take everything to get him. Because that worked out. Eventually, obviously, the denouement and the untangling, but you never know what a guy's going to do until he's in that position. Josh Harris.
Right. And, Bob example is great because the great shined and was successful for a while, but do you have the infrastructure to continue the growth? You build you almost are building the foundation under what is already decorated home. And it's like, yeah, we got nobody look, the foundation is crumbling. Right. We have to rebuild it.
Bags over the windows over here. Don't mind mind that. You know what
Don't
I'm
mind
saying?
that.
The
We're
hors
just going to
d'oeuvres are on
cruise.
the left.
Yeah, so it's a complicated decision, and that's why we're going to spend the next 4 months talking about it at DC local radio here on the Hoffman Show. Pew, 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 pew. Clint Yates talking about all kinds on ESPN Daily. They do a great topic each day, top story, diving into. So check that out daily on your favorite podcast platform, and of course, Around the Horn on ESPN, and the occasional story, written word style in Anscape ESPN
On Papyrus.
Happy New
Unroll
Year.
your papyrus. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always alive as well on the free Odyssey app. We will go around the NFL coming up in 25-ish minutes. Right now, though, obviously one of the big things we've been talking about this week is the culture of the Commanders and the change that it went or didn't undergo under Ron Rivera. It's because it definitely changed. It's just a matter of did it change to something good? And there were some comments by Jahan Dotson the other day that really sparked a lot more conversation on this. And we then were like, well, shoot, we better talk about this for Take Command. I was really looking forward to Logan's take on it because he was a guy that played in different places and was on teams with really good cultures and was on some teams where things went sideways. And there's a lot to get to, and there's only so much you can get to within the course of one podcast. But here was our conversation about it on the latest edition of Take Command. That will be today's Where is the Mouse? Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
The end of the season, Logan, people start to be a little more forthcoming with their answers on certain topics. And Jahan Dotson was asked yesterday by Scott Abraham about the culture in the Commanders' locker room, and here's how that went.
You're in between the lines. What do you think this team needs going forward next year to kind of get more wins, get over the hump?
I would say as far as players, just a sense of culture. Just we got to have a mindset in here that we want change. We can't just accept this type of stuff because this is really hard on a lot of people. And I know a lot of people come from winning backgrounds. So we got to bring that stuff in here. We can't accept anything but winning, honestly. And that starts with us players, no matter who the coaches are. It starts with us. We got to bring our best foot and make sure that we go out every Sunday and bring it.
When you say culture, is that on the players or do the coaches feed into that?
I feel like it's everyone, but, I feel like the best teams that you see in any sport are player-led. Your captains, they step up, and everyone really follows. Because when you're surrounded by guys who are hungry and want to win, it trickles down. It's a domino effect. So I feel like that's where we can start.
That audio courtesy of ABC7. Logan, you hear that? I certainly have a lot of thoughts, shared some of them on the radio already, but we'll rehash some of what I think here. But first, I'd be curious what you think when you hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's one of those comments where I think he's trying to take a personal accountability. He's kind of saying it's on the players, and a good player will do that. But I think obviously Scott and the rest of the media is like drawing maybe a correlation to some other things, other factors when it comes to leadership and building a culture. And what I will say is like culture is a funny word. It's like so ambiguous and it's very hard to kind of define. I think, Jahan alluded to like perhaps, developing a winning culture, and I think like I've been a part of teams that have been led in both ways. Obviously the teams in 2010, 11, 12, I think were very player led teams. Obviously you had one of the most dynamic leaders that I ever played with in London Fletcher. And I think Mike deserves a lot of credit for kind of empowering the right people and encouraging that type of leadership, obviously. And Fletch was fantastic. And it was an older team. And all those older guys were really good pros. They set good examples for the young guys. Lorenzo Alexander, obviously, Kedrick Golson, Reed Dowdy, really high character guys, really high character locker room that could tolerate, that would not tolerate certain things. And as a result, like, I think I would characterize as a team that was very player led and player driven. Then I go to a team like Atlanta, where Dan Quinn had developed this tremendous culture in the building and this tremendous, kind of work environment that was awesome. But then the continuity of the players was a very young team. They didn't have a lot of maturity, and the older players at the time, Matt Ryan, while being a very dynamic leader offensively, was having a hard time relating to the younger population at that point in his career. So obviously, I think people want to say, oh, it's the players, it's the coaches, but it's really the dynamic between the two. And I think it's crazy in the NFL how dramatically that can change, in year to year, because like the roster turnover is so crazy. So I think, I think people are going to make a lot of this soundbite, and I kind of understand why to a certain extent. But I think that ultimately, I agree with what he's saying. Like, this is a player thing. Like, and when you look at this situation specifically, like, we don't know for sure. We all anticipate big changes in terms of coaching staff, but players are kind of the lifeblood of the organization, especially players like John, Duran. Players are going to be here for a long time. So their leadership is going to be extremely important. I don't think Jahan's being critical of them necessarily, but I do think he's calling attention to something that he'd like to see change.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting when he mentioned specifically the captains, and I don't know the relationship between he and Terry, Terry is obviously in his room, so the relationship there is going to be more important for him as a fellow wide receiver. But obviously, John is kind of one of the key voices, if not the key voice in the room. And when you talk about that relationship between players and coaches, one of the things that I wonder about, and this is, I'm going to be very clear here. There are times that I know things and I wink, nod, and I'm like, I wonder, hey, I don't know anything here. This is me purely speculating, just kind of watching what has happened, and not even speculating, me truly like wondering. Like, John is a guy that I remember after his rookie year, the way he answered questions at the end on like locker cleanout day. I remember going on the Junkies the day after going, I don't care what they do this offseason. If they don't put a C on that guy's chest, they've made a mistake. Like, he is so important with how he thinks about the game and winning and all this kind of stuff. Still pretty fresh off Nick Saban school and all of that. And you watch Chase and Montez, but really Chase emerged as a very loud voice in the same room and not necessarily always in a constructive way. And I just wonder if John kind of felt like sick of it and neutered to an extent, and that undercut his voice as someone who was trying to lead in a certain direction, and maybe there was some tension pulling in opposite directions. And that can happen within a locker room, and sometimes it can be healthy, but obviously in this particular case, it certainly hasn't been healthy enough to produce wins. It doesn't feel like, based off the comments coming out and some of the things that we've heard, that the culture is great in that locker room. And I do wonder, being a little hands-off, or perhaps too hands-off if you're Ron, did you allow the wrong voices? Because you talk about how Mike did a really good job of making sure that Fletch was the guy that was heard. And so the way I would look at it on a big picture scale is this. I think that you need to have the illusion of being player-led. It's actually not. It starts at the very top of the organization of having a clear vision for what you want, empowering the right people. And if you don't have them, bringing in the right people, and then making sure that the standard is set to a point that they're enforcing your standard. And so maybe as a coach or an executive, you don't have to be the enforcer of the culture, but you do need to set it. And I don't know that was done particularly well over the 4 years that Ron was here. And there could be a variety of reasons, from disharmony on the coaching staff itself, and some lack of continuity and lack of communication, which we've talked about in the past, different visions. And it could be big things or little things, different visions of, like, it seemed like Ron and Scott had different visions of the offense. And this year, the coordinator they bring in didn't really seem to match the way they built the team. And so there's these points of friction that makes it really hard for players to even understand what they want the culture to be and what they want the kind of messaging and thought processes to be in the first place. And so, again, I go back to that phrase, like the illusion of player-led, but it's actually because they're just enforcing something where everyone's all on the same page from top to bottom of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if obviously in this situation, I don't disagree with the way you characterize that. There does seem to be a little bit of, friction's a good word, between kind of the vision of certain members of the staff. And I've had conversations where it's like, this person wasn't coaching this the way we wanted it to be coached, and blah, 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 blah. Right. And that does affect the ability for the players to play good football. And I ultimately think it's important to note that, like, good culture and winning culture, like, they're really closely connected, right? So I think back to, like, the Dan Quinn example, and like I said, he's got a great culture. It was awesome to come to work. Really enjoyed the environment there, right? But they weren't winning, and it really negatively impacted the buy-in to that, right?
Right.
So I think like even even with Mike, for example, like obviously like 2012 the culture's great, everything's awesome, and then
13, it's the one that ends in Kyle throwing the ball 70 times at the end of the season.
And so I think like as much as you want to say like it's this one thing or this one relationship or whatever, like not winning football games is a big part of it, right? Because Ron might have the I've heard recently that guys are really stoked on Ron being the defensive coordinator. They just like his energy, they like the vibe that he's bringing in, and that's cool to hear. But that's like not a sustainable thing necessarily if you're losing a bunch of games, because people say, well, it's not positively affecting the outcome of anything. So you get a lot of guys who don't buy in. And so so back to the main point is like I don't think there's an illusion of player-led teams. I think there are player-led teams. I think there are coaches that are courageous enough to let that happen, and you have to have the right team for it, right? And I think like like one thing about this team that I've said a bunch is they don't, and this is maybe new CBA issues that you're gonna have to deal with when you're constructing a roster, is there's no like middle class of the roster anymore. There's not that like 7-8 year vet that's hanging around on like a $5 million for 3-year type of contract that's been around, that knows how to be a pro, that can provide some kind of foundational support for the rest of the roster. It's like you have old dudes, you have young dudes, and you have way more young dudes than you have old dudes. So the leadership dynamic in the locker room is drastically different, I think. And I think that's something that needs to be acknowledged. And every team's going through it at the NFL, but I look at like the Baltimore Ravens, for example, and they've done a good job of kind of saying, and I don't know how they've done this through their GM and through their vision, their team vision. You always talk about team vision in soccer and stuff like that, of prioritizing certain guys in leadership roles that are veterans, that are, like Picard for them. Like they could have easily let Picard walk this offseason, but they've kept him around. He's a culture piece for them. The linebackers, right? Culture pieces. And so I think that's something that those are decisions that are made, right? And so like, who are the culture pieces here? Because you can't just have two guys with captains on their chest and be like, those are our culture pieces. It's like in the example of the 2012 team, which again was one of the best team-led, player-led teams I've ever been on. Obviously, you had Fletch, who's like the guy, right? But then you had all of these kind of offensive. You had all these guys that were like in the middle, guys that were going to do the extra stuff. Like I mentioned, Zoe, Kedrick, the offensive line guys like Will Montgomery, Corey Lichtensteiger. Those guys were great because they held a standard not only in their own room, but like for the offense. You said, oh, those are the guys that are pros. And so I look at this team and I'm kind of like, do they have anybody that is not the top, not the bottom, but the middle? And so like, again, when we're talking about, you mentioned the coaching staff, I also think in terms of roster construction, there's a little bit of an issue here in terms of kind of saying, what is our culture and who are the guys that have been around long enough to kind of embody and embrace that culture and then teach that culture to the new guys coming in. So that's why this is such a complicated thing. And I think it's even more of an issue, quite honestly, when you're not winning football games, because I've been a part of teams with bad cultures, like bad standards, but you're winning games. Like at some point, everything's great. Everything's awesome. You're like, oh, wow, we're going to be good. It ends up being a losing culture long-term, right? But it's fine while you're winning, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, totally. And there's 100% that where like if you win, it just covers up a lot of stuff. And there's been teams that I've covered where you just look around and you go, man, if this thing goes sideways, it's gonna be bad. Like it's gonna blow up in a bad way because they're winning for other reasons right now. But you also do occasionally have teams that really do stick together through the crap of a season. Or they look at it and like, we're just not doing what we need to do, or like we've had bad injury luck, or just schedule's really hard, but like we still believe we have what we need in the locker room. And I think there was some of that to an extent for part of this season, but I think that is long gone. There's a couple things you said there that I think are interesting that also play back to Jahan's quote, and the biggest one I think is the willingness to change. And I wonder how much that is a drawback to some of the friction with Eric earlier in the season. And,
maybe,
like the willingness to be open to doing things differently. And this is where winning also matters. We talk about buy-in, like these things mesh, causation, correlation 100%, where if you do something new, if you ask people to do something new and it works, they'll continue to do it. And if it doesn't work, then they're going to be like, why are we changing all this stuff? Why are you upsetting the way I do things? Why are you making things harder? Why am I grinding this much more? Why am I this, that, the other thing? when there's no payoff. And in fact, this season has been worse than any of the others that they've had in the last 4 years. This is the worst season of Rivera's tenure. And so if guys had questions coming in, I think there's both on the player side, like to Jahan's point, are guys willing to do what it takes? Are they willing to learn from an Eric Bieniemy who's been there? You talk about like that middle management level, if you will, from a guy like Andrew Wiley. And I know that Wiley is the opposite of a fan favorite. He's had his struggles at times this year, but like he played on a Super Bowl winner. Right. So if he comes in and is like, hey guys, this is how we need to be doing this. We need to do these extra things or watch this extra film or whatever. People willing to listen to someone like an Andrew Wiley who's from the outside and also make key mistakes at big points in games. And it's like, listen to you, like you just got Sam hit from his blind, hit in his face. So I think there's that element too of the willing from the players. But then the other side of this, if I'm going to look at it from the coaching side, is do you as a coach meet people where they are? And I don't know that Eric specifically is that kind of guy. Eric has a very set way of doing things.
We don't know. There's rumors and things, but just to be clear.
Well, I'm just saying, like, he is a guy that is like, he said this. Like, this is not.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, we're not in the meeting room, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Just for people listening.
Yeah, no, we're not in the meeting room for sure. But it's like, if Eric is like my way or the highway, and this is the way we do things, this is the way that I do things, and I know it works, and you're not willing to meet guys where they are and bring them to where you want to go, it's not going to work either. Yeah. And so it's not that Eric is wrong about the way that he wants to do things. It's just that it's getting the guys to come along with you. Did he do the things he needed to do to build those bridges, knowing that you had guys coming from a different way of doing things that might have some different thoughts, and some of whom who had been very successful in their careers, presumably. So we don't know. But those are the kind of things that I think, if you're doing the dissection, like those are the questions you'd want to answer.
Yeah, 100%. And I also think like leadership and culture, like there's such a psychology element to it. Like, I do the high school football coaching thing, and we had like a very interesting season, where it's, the head coach had to step away for a little bit. And then when he came back, and they're high school kids, but in some ways it like magnifies leadership. It magnifies culture in a way that I think is very unique. Because in the NFL and in college not so much, but in the NFL for sure, there's like a professionalism that hides some of the cultural deficiencies, right? Because everyone is kind of like, I'm a private contractor, I have to do the best for myself. And there's this external and internal motivation. They're like these very type A people most of the time. So I think it covers up a lot of cultural deficiencies. Like when you're in the lock, you won't be able to tell. But in high school, I think it's more, they wear it on their sleeve a little bit more. And so what I was going to say is like when the coach came back, like we were running this essentially the same, everything was the same. When he came back, there was like an uptick in players, right? Because they just believed in what this guy was doing a little bit more. And so I think like that's something else about just culture that is so ambiguous, and why there's a million books written about it, right? It's because there's no perfect formula, and there's no like, this is definitively the right way to do it. But I think it's like, to your point, like there is a way to maximize the 53 dudes on the team that is different for each team, right? Yeah. Like what works in New England, like if he came here like next week and said, this is, and just, there was no change or no like slow
transition.
Yes, yeah. Correct. That would be really challenging. I think you get a lot of pushback from him, in terms of what Bill Belichick and his leadership style and the culture that he is purported to have in New England. So I do think there's a lot of that about kind of finding the right mix for what your players need, for what your team needs. And it's different for everybody. Like we just talked about this team and the construction and all these different things. So I think that's one of the things that makes it really hard. And it makes it especially hard when you're not winning football games. It makes it really, really hard to kind of keep any kind of cultural identity, any type of cultural vision. And you've pointed out some of the things, like position coaches, like I think back to the Sam Mills thing, and that was obviously something where he's not coaching it the way that Jack wants it to be coached. And that, undermines that room and sets that room back for a couple of years and makes that room kind of, like you said, like you alluded to, maybe the fact that John is frustrated by Chase, and because Chase isn't doing what Sam wants or what Jack wants, and there's no accountability. And obviously, so I think there's a lot of things with this team with regards to culture, but I just wanted to point out that like there's no there's no magic formula. Like the new guy coming in,
Right.
like is not going to be able to be like this is the road to good culture. He'll have to come in, evaluate the team, and be like, these are some things I think we could do differently from a cultural standpoint. And I think that's the thing about this that's so about Jahan's comments specifically that are so interesting, because he's not wrong to say it's a player thing, and you're not wrong to insinuate that it's a coach's thing, because every team, like I alluded to, like when I was talking about my career, is different, and the mixture of getting that done is hard. And I think having a coach and a team and leaders on the team, a leadership in the coaching room and coaches on the or leaders on the team that understand that it's different, it is what makes a good culture. And it's really hard to find people like that.
To be clear about what I'm saying, I'm not saying it's a coach thing versus a player thing. I'm saying it's
No,
a
I know.
cohesion thing.
No, yeah, I think we're saying the
I
same
know.
thing.
I know you get what I'm saying. Just to be clear for the audience, like it is a cohesion thing. It is, can you get everybody on the same page? And I think, like for instance, to go back to the John example, like did John all of a sudden become a bad leader? No. I think John got sick of some stuff, and he's a human being. And so maybe his leadership fell off this year because he was just tired of seeing some of the other people get away with stuff that in the winning culture that he was used to at Alabama, right? That's his example. That's his version of what this winning culture looks like, which Nick Saban runs the tightest of ships, a version, by the way, that would not really work probably very well in the NFL, because all of a sudden the power structures are different from college to the pros with contracts and grown men with families versus college kids. But like the level of looseness, which Ron has had success with because he could trust guys like Luke Kuechly, et cetera, in his past. And you know, a little bit more,
and trust your coordinators too. I think that's the other thing is like, that's kind of the, you know, cause I like I said, I think when Ron took over as DC, like there was a cultural shift in the defense, right? Schematic shift and a cultural shift, which again, no criticism of Jack here necessarily. It was just different, but the guys responded better to it. Right. And I think like, that's something that, again, like you were kind of alluding to at the beginning, is like Ron is one piece, but the roots of that tree of the coaching staff are really kind of your cultural, you know, propagators here. And I think that's something else that we're those guys in the best positions all the time. I don't know. So.
Yeah. And then the front office side of it too is like, who do you bring in and empower? And like, how much does that matter in your scouting? I know for a fact when the old regime was here that some of the high up personnel, maybe not a Bruce Allen, but like the Kyle Smiths of the world, and some of the people on that scouting staff really prioritized certain types of guys. And that's why John Allen was targeted, by the way. It's like, we want this dude to be, as our first round pick, the captain of the football team. Like, was Jamin, like, I like Jamin's progression as a football player in a lot of ways, but like, I don't think that he was ever drafted with the idea of like, oh, that's going to be the captain leader of our team. And who you prioritize and what skill sets you prioritize from like the makeup standpoint of who your best players are matters a lot too. And I think that's something too about like that 2012 team, for instance. You have the middle management, if you will, the Lorenzo Alexanders, who's a Pro Bowler, by the way, but on special teams. But like London Fletcher, on top of being your leader, is also one of your best players. And that's really important too, is like, do you have, and that's why like I think from a Terry and John standpoint, like you're okay. But do you have other people that are willing to follow them? Do you have other people up and down that roster? Do you have that middle level of player? And, you know, are the people that you're bringing in with the hopes of being your best players the type of leadership character guys that are going to make your football team maximized? And I don't know that was always prioritized here, or maybe it was and they missed on the evaluation, because that happens too.
Well, I also think it's just like understanding like what you have in the building too. And because of this, there's so much turnover here all the time. Like, you know, the roles aren't defined. There's a COVID year. Ron's got cancer. Like all that
100%
adversity makes it really hard to have a clear perspective. But I look at like, you know, we talked about DeJuan Jones a lot during the draft in the last cycle, and there was a lot of character concerns about him. Right. And so I do think the team did a good job of saying like, even though he's uber talented, he doesn't fit here. But Cleveland, like, look at the group that they have there. Look at the coach they have there. Like, they can tolerate that because they know that they have the infrastructure to support a player like that. And I think like that's something that self-awareness that you're talking about is really, really hard to come by with teams, right? And I think the thing, we're going to talk about this more with draft stuff and the importance of meetings at draft day and all those types of things. But The problem with the draft is there's only one John Allen. There's one guy who's a really good football player, who's wired the right way, who's a good leader. Like, very rarely do you have a player that has all three of those traits, right? But how much do you want to prioritize like a skilled player, and how much can your culture accommodate that guy? I remember with Sean, when Sean was here, they went out and signed Deshaun Jackson. And that was a guy that Mike probably wouldn't have signed, right? Because Mike really, really, really valued kind of these blue collar, tough guys. Think about the receivers that were here at the time, like Pierre Garcon, Josh Morgan, like Santana Moss, like good pros, physical dudes. And Deshaun just didn't fit that. But I remember talking to Sean. He was like, I think our culture can handle him, right? I think our culture can tolerate that. And it was really interesting to watch his, he's a great player, Deshaun, and a pretty good teammate, to be quite honest. Like, no complaints about him. But it was really interesting to watch him and his addition in conjunction with Jay's leadership style and how that kind of affected the locker room. If Mike had been here still, I'm pretty confident, like, he wouldn't have brought him in. But if he had, the rest of the team had such high character that it wouldn't have tolerated some of the stuff that Deshaun was doing, like coming late to practice or missing treatment or whatever. Like, but again, like, that's how one piece, one change, one difference can totally impact or erode the culture of a locker room.
For sure. We could go forever on this. Yeah. There's so many different, as you said, there's been books written about it, but that's going to do it for today. It's something that we'll talk about when, as the new people come in, like how do they build it through the draft. So we'll be touching on this quite a bit throughout the off season. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980 with you all the way until 7 o'clock tonight, which, if we're being honest, Anthony Haney, is a fact that we just learned.
Yes, it is true indeed. I was doing the chapters for the show, and usually when I do the chapters, it shows the time from 4 to like 6:30 if we're on, till 6:30. But today I seen 7 o'clock, and I was confused because we just played the Cavs.
Yeah.
A couple of days ago, and they played at 7.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was gonna be the same thing today, and
apparently in Cleveland they play at 7:30 on Friday nights. So Dave Johnson is going to join us at 6:30 instead of 6:15, and then the rest of the show will kind of shake out that way. Also, we are running way behind. I didn't realize how that snuck up on me. That Take Command segment, was that long? We started that late. Well, we had some tech issues.
Yeah, it was both.
So it was a little long, plus some tech issues, and now we're way behind.
Yeah.
So here's what we'll do for the rest of the show. We're going to have to take another quick break in about 2 minutes. But that'll be like a regular, quick old, fast break. Then Anthony and I will make our picks, at least half of them, before 6 o'clock. We'll get the second half of our picks after 6 o'clock. Does that work? I guess our pick six can be at 6:15. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
We're just going to bump everything back a segment. And then Dave will join us at 6:30, and then we'll do real things. So it's kind of like our show still ending at 6:45 in terms of how we had the original rundown. We just are ending at 7 instead, and it kind of works out.
Mm-hmm.
Look at God or something, if that's what you believe in.
Yeah.
Look at your personal deity of choice.
Yeah.
Look at technology. Maybe, Anthony, all of the fight, the tech troubles, the just frustration we've had today has actually been in our favor.
Always good to get one of those out,
The blessings come when you're not looking for them.
Yeah. It definitely has been one of those days, though.
Yeah, it's been a Tuesday of a Friday, would you say?
Mm-hmm.
More of a Monday, more of a Tuesday?
I would probably say Tuesday.
Hate when we're having a Tuesday of a Friday.
Yeah.
Every time you think that you're just lining up and things are going to go great for you.
This time I'm going to kick that football clear to the moon.
Ouch. So we'll pick the games next. Here's what's trending. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. Coming up, 6:30, Dave Johnson joins us. Can the Wizards, not do what they did on Wednesday? Please. Please. That was very, very ugly against the Cavaliers. We'll talk to Dave coming up at 6:30. Right now, though, Anthony Haney. It's time to set the stage, pick some football games, sir. What are the records after your stellar week last week, and how crazy are you about to get to try to make up whatever gap is left?
So the thing is, I'm not going to be too crazy. I think things will work out in my favor regardless. But right now, you do have an 8-game lead over me. You are a staggering 160-92, and I am 152-100.
So you need to pick at least 8 games different than me and get them all right.
Yep.
To tie.
Yep. Are we carrying this over into the playoffs as well?
I guess we could.
Okay, just making sure.
We should, because then it becomes a less desperate deal for you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You don't have to make it all up today. Okay, so let's pick the Saturday games and try to get through the 1:00ers. And then we will get to the meaningful games in the next segment, provide a little bit more analysis on those perhaps as well, because all the 425 games on top of the Saturday games are your most meaningful ones in terms of playoff implications. And then obviously Sunday night or AFC East is on the line as well. Starts off 4:30 tomorrow, ABC, ESPN, Steelers and Ravens. The Ravens are 13-3, have locked up the number 1 seed, and thus are sitting many players, including MVP favorite Lamar Jackson. Meanwhile, the Steelers still alive for the playoffs. It's going to be Mason Rudolph. Again, Kenny Pickett should be back as the backup, but Najee Harris just shy of 1,000 yards on the season. Steelers, Ravens, always a banger, even with backups for Baltimore. It's in Baltimore. Can Pittsburgh keep their playoff hopes alive?
I think they do. I do. Baltimore's resting a lot of guys, a lot of starters. Yeah, I just think this is, written for, the Steelers to go out here and win this game. It still is a divisional game, and, Tyler Huntley, he's proven himself to be serviceable, I guess, as a QB in the NFL. But
serviceable against TJ Watt in a game where you're desperate?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to take Pittsburgh as well.
Yeah.
By the way, I have the old NFL playoff scenarios email up here. So the Pittsburgh Steelers clinch a playoff berth with a win and a Buffalo loss, or a win and a Jacksonville loss, or tie, or a win and a Houston-Indy tie, or a Pittsburgh tie, a Jacksonville loss, and Houston-Indy doesn't end in a tie, or a Jacksonville loss, a Denver win, and Houston and Indy doesn't end in a tie. So it seems like the simplest one
they need Jacksonville to
would
lose.
be either Jacksonville lose,
Bills.
Denver win, Houston Indy doesn't tie, and then they win and Buffalo loses.
Yeah.
Or Jacksonville loses. But Jacksonville losing is the big one for them.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So there's the Pittsburgh Steelers playoff scenarios. Seems more than plausible. Texans, Colts. This is Saturday Night Football. It's in Indianapolis. Houston, 1.5 favorites on the road at your boys. CJ Stroud, ready to go. Probably crosses the 4,000-yard marker in this one. He's 156 yards shy. Can the rookie complete a miracle season and bring the Houston Texans, who we all thought would be right back near the top of the draft board, into the playoffs?
I have an easy answer for you, Craig, and the only answer is no. The Colts are going to go out there, get it done in Lucas Oil. Yours truly will beat their front and center. Can't wait for it. Win or go home. You got to love it. Got to love it.
I think CJ Stroud's a freaking gamer.
Yep.
And that yup in your voice is fear, Anthony.
it's not necessarily fear. It's just more so the Colts have inexperienced cornerbacks, but the fact that they played all season long and they're seemingly to me they've gotten better. I think they'll be able to withstand Nico Collins. I think they'll have Juju Brents, Nico Collins. That's going to be a matchup we watch all day tomorrow.
It's going to be tough. And I mean, Z's ability to make sure that Stroud doesn't scramble, the running backs become really important in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Houston seems like a team that's on a mission this year, and I think that they're going to win. I'm picking the Texans. You can tell Z that, and he can call into the show on Monday, and he can't curse me out if they win because that's only because of the FCC.
Yeah.
But he can say I told you so, and honestly, I'll be very happy. I would love that Indy team to make the playoffs. The way they fought through their quarterback going down early.
Mm-hmm.
Z's story is incredible in so many ways, but Shaq Leonard was kind of the guy, and now Zaire's been incredible in the middle of that defense. Some of the young guys you talked about, I really like that Indy team. They're just super up and down, fluctuating. The winner of this game, by the way, does make the playoffs, and then depending on what happens with Jacksonville, they can win the division as well. So. Houston wins, they're in. Indy wins, they're in. And then Houston win plus Jacksonville loss or tie. Indy win plus Jacksonville loss or tie. And that winner gets the home playoff game that comes with winning the AFC South. Yes, even winning the AFC South gets you a home playoff game. All right, quickly, let's run through some of these 1 o'clock games, and then we will save the 425s and the 820 for 6 o'clock top of the hour. Browns and Bengals. Browns are sitting pretty much everybody. Bengals are out of it. Bengals are favored by 7 at home. The Browns really are sitting everybody that's left.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the Bengals as well. No rhyme or reason, for real. I mean, the Browns are sitting everybody.
Yeah. Lions are locked in the number 3 seed. I don't think they're sitting Goff, though. I haven't seen that. But they are locked pretty much into that number 3 seed. They face the Vikings, who I don't even know who they're playing at quarterback. Detroit's favored by 3.5 at home. I'm going to take Detroit.
Goff is playing? If he's playing, I'm going with the Lions.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Lions as well. I didn't know he was playing, though.
Let me just double check that real quick. I also don't know. Let's see. Let's just do a search here. This is a public service announcement for all purposes. Jared Goff. I guess I can search Jared Goff playing week 18. Yep, Jared Goff versus Nick Mullins.
Yep.
Seems like he's playing. So there you go. Jags and Titans. This game does, as we mentioned, have playoff implications. Jags win. They win the AFC South. So there are a couple of seeding adjacent games at 1 o'clock that have something to do, but most of the key ones at 4:25. But Jags, Titans, division on the line. Jags on the road. Can they do it? Trevor Lawrence still questionable.
Even if Trevor is questionable, I still just think it's going to be too much Jags, to be honest. Their defense rolling again. They stymied the Panthers, but they are the Panthers.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Jags.
Yeah, I am as well. I don't trust Tennessee. Some rumors that Vrabel could become available and that the Patriots might want to pick him back up. That would be super interesting. Vrabel, the only real successful coach off of the Patriots tree. Speaking of Patriots, 2-point favorites at home. Yes, the Patriots are favored. 2-point favorites at home against the Jets.
I'm going with the Patriots, man, riding that defense. And this could possibly be Bill Belichick's last game. Why not get up for this game? I'm going Patriots.
It is likely Bill Belichick's last game in New England, and I also am going with the Patriots. I think they're actually a better team at this stage of the year. Falcons and Saints. This one has some playoff implications depending on what happens in other games. New Orleans can win the NFC South with a win and a Tampa loss or tie. And New Orleans clinches a playoff berth with a win plus a Seattle loss or tie and a Green Bay loss or tie. So basically, New Orleans gets in with some help. They need Tampa to lose, and then if they want a wild card, they need Seattle and Green Bay to lose. Meanwhile, the Falcons, they are the NFC South champs with a win and a Tampa loss. That is their only way in. They cannot get a wild card spot.
I'm gonna go with the Saints, I think.
I'm going with the Saints.
I'm rooting for Heineke, though. I hope Heineke goes out there and balls out, but I'm going to go with the Saints.
That'd be kind of fun. But, yeah, I think the Saints, they're at home. That crowd's going to be nuts. They have a chance. They will also be scoreboard watching, and they're going to be watching the scoreboard in Charlotte. Bucks, Panthers. This is the last 1 o'clock game. Tampa, 4.5-point favorites. They win. They are the NFC South champions.
Yeah, I think I'm going with the Bucks. They got to bounce back. Bad loss last week. Had a chance to wrap up the division. They'll do it next week.
Yeah, I think so as well. So Tampa, that we got the same winner there. That leaves a slew of games with playoff implications. Divisions on the line at 4:25, and the AFC East on the line in the Sunday Nighter. We'll pick all those games, give you some breakdowns next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, and always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Sorry, Anthony, I got distracted by something that I think we might play in Real Things. So I just DM'd it to you. So look forward to that. Basketball players asked their favorite Taylor Swift song. It went great. It's time, one final time for this season, to do a pick six.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
I'm going to be their biggest and harshest critic, but I'm also their #1 fan.
All right, Anthony, whose turn is it to go first?
It is Craig Hoffman's turn.
Damn it.
No pressure.
Not that I'd be super pumped to go second either.
No pressure.
I mean, literally no pressure. We're not going to revisit this on Monday. We're going to be talking about the news of the day on Monday. Our Monday show is going to look very different than every other Monday show because why would it look the same, you know? Actually, there's a correct answer for number 1. I'm going to go with
number 1.
Emmanuel Forbes. Emmanuel Forbes was in good positions to make plays last week. He did not make plays against Brandon Ayuk. He also lost Brandon Ayuk on that terrible scramble drill down there in the red zone, and that resulted in a touchdown for Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. Ultimately, this is one of the few players that we know is going to be here next year, and I like a lot of what he does from a competitiveness standpoint. I think the ball skills, you've seen them at times, and I think more experience will help unlock his full potential as a player, and hopefully with Kendall Fuller out in this game and Benjamin St. Juste questionable, even if BSJ plays, he will spend as much of the day as possible on CeeDee Lamb and gain that experience. So, Emmanuel Forbes is number 1 on our list for this week. Anthony.
Number 2.
Number 2.
That's what I said.
Number 2, I'm going with my guy, Terry McLaurin.
Really?
Yes. Did I steal one?
No, you go with him every week.
I did not. I did go with him last week.
Yeah, I was about to say, don't you dare say I didn't use him last week. Okay, why are you going with Terry McLaurin?
Because he has a chance to notch 1,000 yards for the 4th time in his young career. And we already know he's going to get a lot of man coverage. And again, it's going to be on Terry to, win quick and also sometimes come down with the contested catch. Against Stephon Gilmore last time, he had a rough outing. Gilly really had him locked down. So I'm expecting Terry to, bounce back, go out there in the season with a bang.
All right, I don't hate that. We'll see how much of a priority that is. Sometimes that is a big priority, and a guy like EB who's been around and a guy like Ron might be like, hey, let's make sure we get Terry some opportunities here and get him across that 1,000-yard. By the way, something Terry also has locked up already for the 4th time. Congratulations to Terry for winning the Media Good Guy Award 4 straight years as the best interview in the Commander's locker room. Someone who gives insight, someone who makes himself available. He's consistent. He's not always around, from what I understand now, but he's got his time and he never misses his call. He talks Wednesdays at whatever time, and everybody knows they better be there at his locker, and he fulfills that obligation, and he answers every single question, and he doesn't throw away answers. He's a great interview, as someone who's interviewed him a number of times, and he's the other thing that I say I appreciate about Terry in my interactions with him as a media member, which now involve going to the stadium and seeing him, is he treats you like a human. If you walk by, he's like, "Hey man, how are you?" And that's nice because a lot of, I think, athletes in general see the media as non-human, and we're just men and women trying to do our jobs just like they're out there doing theirs. And Terry, I think, realizes that in a major way. So no surprise, Terry wins the Good Guy Award. So congrats to him. All right, number 3.
Number 3.
Us in technology today, Craig.
It's a Techno-Tard Friday. Okay. So we are going to go with Quan Martin for basically the same reasons that we went with Emmanuel Forbes. Quan has been playing good ball the last couple of weeks. Arguably their best defensive player in some of these games over the last couple of weeks. he's really adapted well to that Buffalo nickel slot type of role. And he could, in that role, wind up on CeeDee Lamb as well. So that is obviously a big, big way that the Cowboys create good matchups. He's got to take care of that, take care of business there. Also important as they continue their run game or their run defense, which has not been very good, but he has actually been pretty good in that role, fitting runs. He's not afraid to take on guards and big offensive linemen in the hole. Quan is a big part of their future. And I think, I've said this before, like, I don't know that I wouldn't re-sign Cam Curl because I have Quan Martin, but if I lose out to Cam Curl in a contract negotiation, I feel a lot better about it because I have Quan Martin. So Quan Martin, number 3, super important for their future. All right, Anthony. Number 4.
Number 4,
Craig, I haven't done this in a couple of weeks.
So you're doing a coordinator.
You already know. I'm going with EB, Craig. I'm going against EB because guess what? In games where we've had the scheme against pressure, he has not done a great job. When we played the Giants both times, he's done a terrible job. When we played the Dolphins, I didn't necessarily think he did all that good of a job. The Bills, of course, and even in the first Dallas, the first Dallas game, the first half was actually okay, but the Wolves fell off the bus real fast. So I'm thinking EB just has to do a better job making sure Sam is comfortable in the pocket, scheming against that pressure, because we already know that Dallas is going to bring it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough, and Dallas is definitely way more vulnerable against the run. Will he in Week 18 on the way out just be like, you want to know what? Screw it. Like, you remember this as a fan, but like the ultimate FU end of season is Kyle Shanahan 2013. Kyle passed the ball 70, 11, 5,200 times, and it was just like, I'm going to prove a point. You guys say I do this too much, I do that too much. Watch this. This is the most miserable game any of us has ever played. We're freezing. My dad and I are about to get fired. We're in New York. This game's going to last 5 hours, and we're going to get our money's worth. And poor Kirk Cousins just had to drop back 50, 11 times. And I wonder if EB goes anti-Kyle here. He's like, you know what? You mother lovers have been telling me to run the football all year, so I'm just going to do it. And I think that'd be great because I think it'd actually be more successful than dropping Sam Howell back 50, 11 times.
Yep.
I sure hope he doesn't do that with this pass rush. And by the way, again, Leno, Larson out, and Wiley probably out, but it's listed as questionable. We'll see if he goes on Sunday. My fifth guy, or our fifth guy, my third guy.
Number 5.
I'm going to go with Jahan. I know I feel like I've gone with Jahan a couple times recently, but when you make the comments in the media, you got some extra eyes on you. So I am very curious to see if he goes out and does anything extra, tries to make sure that he's involved in this game. Like, he hasn't had a great year by any stretch of the imagination. I don't even know if I'd qualify him as having a good year. The rapport between him and Howell has never really been there. But when you come out and you're like, hey, we got to develop a winning culture, extra eyes on you, Jahan Dotson. Here are your extra eyes. I hope they're rewarded with footballs and catches because I like Jahan Dotson a lot.
I mean, I love the pick. Again, I think also this could be a game as he uses to go into like next year.
Yeah.
So let's go out with a bang.
For sure.
Number 6.
Number 6, I'm not going to lie, Craig. I was torn between a guy that I don't really have too much expectations for, and then the same reason I just gave for Jahan, just finishing the season strong. So I think I'm going to go with the latter. I'm going to go with Sam Cosmi. I think if he, goes on to, have another stellar performance against Dallas, who is a formidable force up front, I think we can definitely just, continue to build around him. And just going into next season, I think that's going to be great confidence as he might emerge as one of our, captains.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think he's a guy that you want to keep around for a long time. I do wonder. I know they just were like, hey, man, you're a guard now. And he's been awesome at guard. They wind up kicking him back outside.
No.
Not tomorrow, or not Sunday, but like, does the new staff come and be
Next
like,
year?
Why did they move you to guard? Like, you were drafted in the second round and you're a good tackle. We're moving you to tackle. That could be an interesting thing. But I think you probably just keep him at guard. I kick Wiley inside the guard, draft one tackle, sign the other. Now Stromberg at center. Now you're cooking. All right, that is our pick 6. Dave Johnson joins us from Cleveland next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Wizards game day here on the Team 980, your flagship home for Wizards basketball. And that means it's time for us to talk to Dave Johnson.
Time to get the radio party started.
Blocked by Bilal Coulibaly. Oh boy, did he stuff him. Left wing pull, it's there. Oh, that's a pool party. Near the basket, slam right in. And then they're stealing the slam. You better go off. Intercepted by Kispert. Kispert now, foul line. Oh, slam. Ooh, that'll jar your preserves.
It's time for Dave Johnson on a Wizards game day.
Kuzma for three. Oh, it's there. It's there. Big shot.
On the Hoffman Show.
Hey, you better go off.
Dave joins us from Cleveland, which means for the second time this week, I get to go, hello, Cleveland. Anthony, can you bring Dave up for me? Thank you, sir. Dave, how are we doing?
Well said. And by the way, I have the answer to the question, why is Cleveland now referred to as the land, or the etymology of that?
Yes, please enlighten us.
Now, tonight, as I look on the court, the wine and gold court, it's a big C in the middle, not the land, because on Wednesdays, they were wearing their City Edition uniforms, which has the land for Cleveland. And apparently, and this is why I was not aware of it, but the land as a nickname for Cleveland I'm told by this thing called the internet that it was bubbling in the underground of the city's hip-hop culture during the early 90s and then made its way mainstream in 1995. So that's why Cleveland is the land. So if you want to be hip when you travel to Northeast Ohio, tell them Dave Johnson sent you and use the land.
Amazing. All right, so that solves one mystery. Dave, here's our show mystery tonight. We were unaware initially that this game is a 7:30 start, which is really just a terrible job of Anthony and I checking the schedule. Like that's an operator error. But these two teams did play on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Why are they playing at 7:30 tonight? Now these are the tough questions.
No, and now this question will have to spill into next week, which no doubt will be a cliffhanger for your listeners. I have certainly efforted to find that out because while it's only a half-hour difference, believe me, it makes a difference to our return home time. So my dreams of getting back to D.C. by midnight have been shattered cruelly by this, and I can't figure out why because we have a back-to-back. So you would think they would like to give us 24 hours. They don't play tomorrow, so throw the Cavaliers out of the equation. But it makes no sense. And I've asked a couple times about it. Nobody seems to have an answer. So and that might be a tougher one to find out because I found out about the land and the hip hop culture via the internet, like most people find out everything. But this might not be on the internet. So I'm going to have to get to the bottom of why it's a 7:30 tip tonight. And I don't want to hear about traffic because Cleveland is not D.C. in terms of traffic. In fact, what amazes me, and I love it when you come to cities like Cleveland, you drive around on a night at 7 o'clock on a street that would be the equivalent of our, let's say, Connecticut Avenue, and it feels like you're in a movie set. And at any moment, like a 1940s gangster is going to come out of the bank or something and shoot it up. It just has that feel to it. So I'll have to figure out why we were starting at 7:30 tonight. 7:15 is a pregame on the Washington Wizards radio network, but you shouldn't feel bad because how I found out this morning was my producer telling me that the Power pregame, which is on the Wizards app right now, would start at 6:15. I said 6:15. Why? It's supposed to be an hour before tip-off or before scheduled game time. So that's how I found out. So we're all just flummoxed.
Anthony, we're not alone. Dave didn't know either. Hey! That makes hey Dave, if we're gonna be out of the loop, at least we're together, you know?
Right. Well,
Misery / confusion loves company.
Now, and this is one of those things where one of the great things about although the NFL I think plays now on every day of the week and every time, they're probably preempting the Today Show in the mornings for a game or something, but once upon a time, the
Don't
NFL
give him many ideas, Dave, please.
No, I do. Don't take it. Once upon a time, and your listeners know this, NFL games were Sunday, 1 o'clock, and then the second was 4, and that was it. It wasn't all this Sunday night, Thursday night, et cetera, et cetera. However, as I was growing up, and this, people should get an appreciation for this, I was a Baltimore Colts fan because I grew up closer to Baltimore. And Baltimore was the only team, and this is into the 70s, that kicked off, and maybe right up until they bolted in the night for Indianapolis, their kickoff time was 2 o'clock. And the reason, and it's so sweet, the city leaders in Baltimore, it shows you that Baltimore once upon a time was just a little big town.
Are you aware of
the city leaders said, well, we're going to not allow them to kick it off until 2 because we have to let people get out of church on time. You should flip your phone around and take a look at it. It's almost like a Mayberry story, but even in the 70s, Baltimore was still a city of 1 million people or whatever, and yet the NFL didn't kick off until 2 o'clock because, you need to get people a chance to leave church and change clothes and get ready to yell and scream.
You know, as someone who grew up in the South, I'm actually surprised that wasn't a more common thing. I guess there wasn't a team in Charlotte until the 90s, and there wasn't a team in Jacksonville until the 90s. But those two places seem like a place that pro football could have been pushed back because of church. Anyway, Dave, unfortunately, I think we've stalled long enough. What happened the other night? I mean, it's one thing. We know that this season isn't about wins and losses, but the blowouts, those are not very fun. What went so horribly wrong on Wednesday?
Well, look, they you're going to hear Wes Unseld say in the pregame, they out-physicaled the Wizards. The Wizards, plain and simple, there's no way to sugarcoat or put a mask on a 39-point loss. They got it handed to them, and sadly that's going to happen also in the best of seasons. But it certainly was disappointing with the way this team has been trending. I mean, very competitive against the Hawks and won the previous. So I mean, look. By all rights, they actually could have come to Cleveland looking to go on a 3-game winning streak against the Cavaliers team that is missing a couple starters. So there's no excuses. And what you want to see tonight, okay, what's the response? And again, I said the other night, I'll give the team credit. They had a situation, in Orlando where
you should
the
turn
second game against the Magic was much better than the first. When you played them in the consecutive days or 2 games over 3 days.
That's
so
been about, I don't know, 30 years. So.
They just got it handed to them. I think what happens is, as much as we like to diagram things, and they tell me artificial intelligence exists and all those things, I think this team got the Cavaliers are not a good 3-point shooting team. They shot 48% and made 20 threes the other night. I think the Wizards, for the most part, has been a team that is, needless to say, played through adversity, keeps their head held high. But I think they got demoralized with the 3-pointers that kept going in. And it's a simple look at the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. Some of the numbers are deceiving, but they got beaten up on the boards and they were outshot from 3. And so that's going to end in an ugly loss, which it did. So tonight they have to be more physical on the perimeter. Too many guys got lost and just had field days with outside shots, and they have to be more physical on the inside. You can't get beaten, 35-17 in second chance points, or you can't let a guy like Sam Merrill, who you may or may not have your dance card, he does one thing and make 3-pointers, and he did the other night. So they know it is like the old deal when you go to a doctor and say, "Doc, it hurts when I do this," and he says, "Well, don't do that." So they know what they're supposed to do. It's how they execute it tonight, and if they do, and that's going to be the challenge. And they had a film session yesterday. You can't hide or mask. They were outplayed and out-physicaled on Wednesday night. End of story.
Yeah, and we'll see if they can get it back tonight. This Cleveland crew is tough. Jared Allen, obviously one of the best rebounders in the league. He had a monster night the other night.
What's your favorite Taylor Swift song?
Dave will be on the call coming up at 7:15. The pregame show starts on the Wizards Network. That's 7:15, boys and girls. A stat and a piece of information that Dave and I have known our entire lives. Dave Johnson, everybody. Have a great weekend, sir, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, more answers will be, more questions will be answered next week. I'll look forward to it.
Let's go.
Have a good one.
You too. All right, that's Dave Johnson, everybody, with us on the Hoffman Show. One last look at what is trending, and then real things, real people said, real microphones to wrap up this here radio show.
Bad blood.
Yet another week where I somehow wasn't ready for it. But it's Friday, everybody.
Gotta get down on Friday.
It is. And then we're almost mercifully at the weekend. The weekend we've all been waiting for. And when I say that, I feel weird, Anthony, because I want to be very clear. I'm not going to say no one, and I'm not going to get up here and pontificate today. No one should. Y'all are adults, do what you want. I don't think it's proper to celebrate people losing their jobs. Now, do I think Ron Rivera and many other people who have been handsomely paid, Martin Mayhew, et cetera, are going to be just fine? Yeah. They got houses other places. They'll go to those. They might keep working in the league in whatever capacity. Like, good for them. They had good runs. In Rivera's case, like, you know, he's been in this league for 40 years. I don't think you need to feel bad for Ron Rivera by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't feel bad for Ron Rivera because ultimately this is the business. He didn't do the job well. It's a business where there's a scoreboard and the scoreboard says, so with that said, I do not feel bad for Ron Rivera. I don't want to, there's no reason to cause a parade here. The parade can come when you hire the next guy if you really think that person is very good at what they do and that you're excited about the next thing. That said, we've known this is coming for so freaking long that just getting here I am happy about. Like, the purgatory is almost over. We are now at the point where we can finally start looking ahead without reckless speculation and without any immediacy, not feeling like it's there. Come Monday, we can have real conversations about what's next for this team, and we can do it without some of the couch language that we've had to implement, because it's always, if they do this, and really lately it's been when they do this. The when is coming. The when will be Monday. And also, I will tell you this. On Monday, I am planning on going to Ashburn. They'll have their open locker room like always. Who knows if the coaching stuff will be done by then, and who else? I think the biggest question, Anthony, for me for Monday is what else happens, right? We know Rivera. Sorry, Ron. We know Rivera is on his way out. Do they go ahead and get rid of Mayhew? I think probably. Herney is one I have a question about because I could see him staying in an executive senior role as like a transition, someone who knows the scouts, has had some success in his career, picking players, has opinions that might be valued. I could see him staying, at least for now. Like, he will not have a lot of power, but he could stay. Bieniemy's very up in the air on a temporary basis, right? He's on a 2-year contract. Do you let him go now, or do you let the next coach decide? And then also what happens to the rest of the coaches? I'd imagine the defensive staff is out. Like, the entire defensive staff, see ya, thanks for playing. Maybe there's some low-level assistants that get a chance to interview to keep their jobs. But in all likelihood, probably take care of a lot of that. And then offensively, I think there's a lot of questions as well because, these coaches are under contract. And so, if you like someone and you can not have to double pay and they fit with the new people, you can keep them. So, and there is something to having someone who's familiar with the players, has some knowledge of how the players learn, all that kind of stuff. So, going to be a big day on Monday. Mr. Haney, finally.
It's going to be a huge day, and it's going to be a long day as well.
Yeah, it is.
Be a long day.
Not as long as today because the Wizards play at 7:00, and that means we're done at 6:45.
Yeah, I would just talk about the start to. I mean, your day is going to start before my day is actually going to start before your day because I'll be traveling back from Indy.
Oh, that's
true. I'll be catching up on.
I'll be in the car by 8 a.m. at the latest.
Oh, there it is.
Probably earlier.
Yep.
To get out to Ashburn. So we'll see how long that lasts and if there's any. Because who knows? Like, does Josh Harris hold a press conference on Monday? It's possible. It's possible.
Dang.
So we'll see how that.
Maybe
see how
Tuesday.
that go.
Yeah.
All right. With all of that said, let's wrap up the show with some fun. It's time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not gonna be
So this year, real people
5 and 11, not very good.
set into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Oh, that's about to be 2 regimes ago. That's hilarious. All right, Brian Daboll, head coach of the Giants, gave his final press conference of the year today and had this hilarious exchange with a reporter. And I would remind you that Brian Daboll has no hair.
Make money on Sunday if they hit certain thresholds. Are you aware of those?
Sorry, I'm looking at your hair.
My hair?
Yeah.
Jealous? Dougie's jealous.
I am, but you should look. You should flip your phone around and take a look at it.
It is a little wild.
But yes, I am. Yeah. That's been about 30 years. So yeah. I forgot the question.
As someone who occasionally gets wild hair, I know that feeling. But that New York media, man, they'll get you.
I couldn't. He really asked, "Are you jealous?" Like,
Pretty funny.
Nah, that was funny.
It's pretty funny. Last night, crazy ending in Golden State, or was it in Denver? Either way, Nikola Jokic, Warriors, Nuggets. He called game. The game was on TNT, and Charles Barkley had a very important question afterwards.
Joker, can I ask you a question? Did you call glass on that? My friend, we went in. I'm happy. Hey, congratulations.
In case you couldn't catch that, my friend, it went in. I was happy.
That's all you can ask for, to be honest.
Yeah.
You hit a buzzer beater like that, and the fact that he's missed 5 total field goals over the last 4 games is insane.
Wait, really?
Yes, he's missed 5 total field goals over the last 4 games. One game he was like 11 for 11. Yesterday I think he was 9 for 11. Like he's been killing it.
Cooking.
Yeah.
MVP.
Uh-oh.
Very, very possible for him.
Is it going to come down to him and
JoJo?
Yeah, again.
Looks like it. All right, we'll see you on Monday. It'll be a Black Monday. So buckle up, kids. See you then.